know the history of the whole concept of whiteness, if you know the history of the whole concept of the white race, where it came from and for what reason, you know that it was a trick, and it's worked brilliantly.
Facts and God eliminate propaganda and mystery. Now we examine the invention of racism, also known as white supremacy. Within 500 years after the birth of the Christian Messiah, came the collapse and fall of the Roman Empire, which led to a period of savagery, ignorance, and poverty in what is now called Europe, the former Western Roman colonies. The emergence of false Christianity, gyromassical Christology, and the manipulation of European monarchies by the Catholic papacy. This time in Europe from the 5th to 15th century is called the Dark Ages. And after Islamic armies slaughtered the Crusaders, the world was dominated by African, Islamic, and Asian civilization. Europe was dumb. The church prevented the masses from being educated. The Vatican promoted dogma, superstition, and misinformation. And Europe suffered from intellectual and cultural deprivation until the arrival of the Moors, a black African nation. 17 AD, the Moors General Tariq into the Iberian Peninsula, beginning the Moorish invasion, and with them the Moors brought higher culture and the wisdom of the ancients, mastering Portugal and Spain with 800 years of elevation. The Moors taught Europe a highly developed form of society, the Umayyad, the Almoravid, and the Umayyad dynasties. It's really not that deep. Black people pioneer and teach. The Moors taught Europe the same way the Egyptians enlightened the Greeks. The Moors advanced agriculture, engineering, medicine, and botany, pioneering mathematics, music, architecture, and biology, establishing universities, mastering surgery, music, and philosophy. They paved the streets of Spain and taught the Europeans to wash their bodies. Southern Europe was essentially an African colony. The Renaissance was caused by Moors, African men with black skin. The European church had the audacity to call them saccharine. But if it had not been for them, Europe would not learn to read and write. No Renaissance, no University of Paris, no Age of Light, no Industrial Revolution, no Cambridge, no Oxford. The Moors were the agriculturists, alchemists, architects, and doctors. Europe's guide out of the Dark Ages are black and Islamic. The context of who taught Europe is quite significant because during the Dark Ages, 99% of Europe was illiterate. Intellectual deficiency was to the European church's benefit because the popes controlled the masses with dogma and ignorance. The Vatican's suppression of high culture and science is quite deliberate. Like always, pimping the people with religion is big business. Until the Moors shine the light of mathematics and metaphysics. That's why European races claim to be Islamic and Egyptian mystics. But don't get it twisted, it was only after 8 centuries of the black Moors ruling Spain that Europe's Dark Ages began to fade and Europe started to change. And European scholars began to reject the church's claims, that their ideas were deranged and the science was off. Nevertheless, thanks to the black Moors, Europe had its renaissance. Then from 1492 to 1700 AD, Europe got rich from its New World colonies. Spain was the first to find the cure for European poverty. And after the Spaniards stole Aztec, Inca, and Mayan wealth, Europe became arrogant and started feeling itself. 1500 to 1600, the church went through reformation while causing the mass genocide of Mesoamerican populations, claiming non-whites didn't have souls as their validation. But the Academy of Europe wanted to usurp the European church. They replaced God with European people at the center of the universe. But the European puppet masters really had a secret alliance. They switched from the dogma of the church to the dogma of pseudoscience. 1700 AD, the Age of Enlightenment. The introduction of the European academic agenda of racism, imperialism, lies, and schism, a sophisticated form of arrogance and ignorance, biological categorization based on moral judgment and physical description. At this time, the construct of whiteness was a brand new invention. White people placed themselves at the top of the chain of being, replacing the God of the Christians. I argue that the Dark Ages never truly ended, and the European use of the terms Renaissance and Enlightenment are bogus and pretentious, because the European Academy promoted the fallacy of the polygenesis. 1735, Carl Linnaeus writes the system of nature and anestheses. He made the fallacious claim that Homo sapiens had 4 subspecies: Americanus, Asiatics, Negroes, and Europeans, of which he claimed Europeans were the greatest. But Linnaeus made his categorizations on a non-scientific basis, using moral and social judgment to form biological classifications, causing the emergence of the scientific races. 1748, David Hume wrote the essay called Of National Character, where he claimed black people had no achievements in history and were savage and barbaric. 1749, George Buffon wrote his Star Naturale, in which he determined white people were the original humans and black people were the degenerated version. 1764, Emmanuel Kant wrote the essay called Observations of the Beautiful Sublime, where he further propagated the white supremacy lie. He claimed black people had no civilization throughout all time. 1764, Francois Voltaire published a dictionary of philosophy, where he claimed the so-called Negro was cursed with ugliness and inferiority. He posed a pathetic argument for white superiority, ranking life forms from Europeans to Negroes to monkeys and then to oysters. And Voltaire was supposed to be one of the Age of Enlightenment's most prominent voices. It was actually the age of non-scientific propaganda and European vanity. These men wanted to subjectively rank and classify humanity. It seems as soon as European Academy was formed, European scholars did their best to forget they were civilized by black Moors. The game is on. What black people have made, Europeans have claimed as their own. Just look at house music, Christianity, and rock and roll. Fact. construct of race was invented by European civil scientists during the European age of civil enlightenment. Racism is European nationalism based on the construct of whiteness, which includes changing the complexion of the Egyptians and remaking the Christ into the European likeness. By this bogus philosophy, Europe validated imperialist and racist policies. Racism is simply white supremacist philosophy. Let's establish some basic terminology. In-groups and out-groups are fundamental in cognitive psychology, but every in-group out-group behavior is not a racist ideology. Ethnocentrism is the assumption and judgment that your culture is superior and all other cultures are somehow negative and inferior. But ethnocentrism is not based on a biological concept. If an individual changes culture, ethnocentrism changes its context. Xenophobia is the fear of aliens and strangers, the perception that the unfamiliar person represents danger. Prejudice is an opinion or preconceived judgment. But prejudice can have positive or negative function. Prejudice can even be manifest for or against inanimate objects. Discrimination is an extension of the prejudicial concept. Discrimination is the act of discerning outlook or prejudicial behavior. But these four concepts alone are not equivalent to that of the races. What connects into racism is based on the core motivation. You see, ethnocentrism is based on cultural clout, similar to rivalries between the American North and South. It's based on the idea that one culture is better than another, and you can be xenophobic of strangers with your own skin color, and you can have prejudice or preconceived judgment about your mother. Discriminating taste may cause you never to eat from Burger King. But racism? That doesn't mean the same thing. Racism is the theory that so-called white people are superior to all other human populations. Scientific racism is based on propaganda and misinformation. In the period when Europe claimed that they saw the light, they invented the construct of white superiority over non-white. And this bogus construct has become one of humanity's greatest tragedies. It's also the cornerstone of European society, culture, and economy. Scientific racism is the validation of colonization and slavery, the wholesale exploitation and genocide of men, women, and babies. By the 19th century, Europeans concentrated their energy mentally to formulate institutions based on white supremacy. 1849, Robert Knox wrote a book called The Racism Man, where he further propagated the white supremacy scam. He claimed non-whites had been slaves to so-called whites since the beginning of time. Either he was uninformed or his ideas were formed of lies. 1853, Arthur Gavin wrote the essay on the inequality of the human races. His theory of Aryan and German superiority was anthropologically wrong and scientifically baseless. His Aryan origin of German people was lies and misinformation. The Aryans were originally melanated peoples that settled in Iran, so even the Aryan identity originated with the black man. Claims regarding melanated peoples were biased and unfounded. The blatant lies of scientific racism went for years unchallenged. It was all invented so Europeans could control, steal, and kill. But in this hour of universal truth, actual facts are revealed. I repeat, the construct of race is bogus and fake. There is no human subspecies, we're just different because of phenotypic traits. The human genome has 46 chromosomes, and chromosomes are composed of DNA and proteins that hold the entire human genetic code. 23 pairs of chromosomes form the human genotype. This applies to all human beings, whether you're black, brown, red, yellow, or white. Phenotype is the occurrence of certain genes that cause various physical traits, such as height, skin color, or whether your hair was curly or straight. But regardless of the physical traits, all human beings are traced to a black woman in Africa. The human species originates with the phenotype of blackness. Even Europeans are descendants of black people from the African continent, because human phenotype was polarized between recessive and dominant. The darker the skin, the more dominant the melanin. All variations in populations are the result of selective breeding and natural selection. A wide range of human aesthetic based on the same human essence. So there is one human species with various families, contrary to the lies of the European Academy. So-called whiteness is actually the recessive aspect of blackness. The polygenous concept of race is biologically backwards. The fact is, Europe acquired wealth and land with germs, guns, and steel. The Eurocentric myth of cultural and intellectual supremacy is not real. The racist ideal is also known as Western civilization. It is a legacy of Europe and a part of America's foundation. Prior to the 18th and 19th century industrial age, India and China dominated the global economy and trade. And for 800 years, the black Moors in Spain had white slaves. It is what it is, the world turns and the sun burns. A civilization cannot be stolen, it must be earned. One human race, and the parents are black. And the mitochondrial DNA of every human being on earth can prove that fact. I propose that racism is a learned psychological disorder, a psychosis, a delusional belief based on the premise that's bogus. Humanity is ultimately defined by free will, our self-lord and master. We're shaped by cultural and societal factors, but an empire of lies was built, and it still stands. From the coltan mines of the Congo to the oil on the Libyan sands, the construct of race was invented to propagate white supremacy. Historical revision to promote the fake white identity, a manifestation of deception and fallacy. Proving if enough people believe a lie, it can shape our reality. The 85% are dumb, deaf, and blind. And 85% believe in the construct of race and commit hate crimes. The idea of reverse racism is simply ridiculous and fake. It's the equivalent of saying there's reverse murder or reverse rape. When racism is exposed as white supremacy madness, the modern racist reverts to the I know you are, but what am I tactic. But the racist dynamic is based on white and non-white. It's been clearly defined and documented in the European Age of Light. It may take 5 generations of universal proper education to reverse the damage. Either that or an act of God to heal this planet. The first step is revealing the facts, and denial of institutional racism keeps the institution of racism intact. Genetically, the whole world traces back to black, but mentally and socially, you are how you think and act. The original people of the planet Earth were exploited and treated the worst. The engineers of human misery have used pseudoscience in the church. This toxin affects every human being in the world, subliminally programming every man, woman, boy, and girl. What I represent is on a whole nother level. I'm not anti-white or pro-black, I'm pro-God, anti-devil.